Well, good evening, everyone. This is John Craig.
And this is Sandy, and you are
And
watching Walking in Spirit and Truth.
like she
Okay,
said,
yeah, and we're so glad to have you here this evening. It's going to be an exciting show. And of course, the Craig Report's going to be part of this, which we will view on the Messianic Lamb Network through Twitch when we get there. But we're not there yet because we're going to have a show first. And first, we want to tell you who we are. John and I pastor a congregation here in Amarillo, Texas. We actually co-pastor the congregation. And we just got through celebrating, of course, Pesach, Passover. And we have Shavuot coming up on the way. And we have a weekend, Shavuot weekend at a campground. And we would love for you to join us. And you can go to our website at www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org and find out more about that. We will have some good fellowship. We will have a mikvah. We will have some rededications, and who knows what all we're going to have, but it's going to be amazing and wonderful. And therefore, you want to come and join us. And also, we have Sukkot coming on the way, which we have been planning for at Lake Paladuro as well. And that is, you want to sign up for that. You can go to our website and do the same thing right there and reserve your spot. So I can't remember how many. I think we said we have 46 RV spots still left and lots of tent camping. And we would love to have you with us for that. Eddie Chumney and Dr. Dina Dye will be two of our speakers. There's more, but they will be two of our speakers. And so therefore, you don't want to miss out. Yep,
no,
you don't want to miss out.
No, not at all. Not at all. And by the way, I want to say hi to Tammy is sitting there in the chat room. Good evening, Tammy. And she says she's lurking. She's lurking. Yeah, that's kind of
keep on lurking, Tammy.
Keep on lurking.
You know what, Tammy around. Tammy's got a lot of wisdom, and she's an amazing woman. So we love to have Tammy around. That's for sure.
Yes. Hey, can I give a shameless plug?
Okay.
All right. I'm going to give a shameless plug. And this has to do, it's over on MessianicLambNetwork.com and also on the YouTube station and YouTube channel. And that is the segment that's called Headlines, Are They Real? And Shower Thoughts. And I'm telling you, I went back, I saw it has Mark took that from the Let Us Reason Together show and separated it out. And I went and watched it today. I'm telling you, those guys that are on that show, they're really funny. I laugh.
So you're talking about yourself.
Especially when you listen at double time, like 2 times speed.
Can you demonstrate how that sounds?
No, I'm just going to have everybody go there and check it out. I'm just saying, it was a lot of fun. I laughed this afternoon. I needed a little bit of a laugh because I've been just focused on my stuff and working, and it's good to be there. Hey, we've got AMA Ladybug in there too, who's
another amazing woman of God. Let me tell you, yeah,
she's claiming that Tammy is a lurker.
She is.
Yeah, does that make Amarillo Ladybug, AMA Ladybug, a lurker?
I couldn't say.
I don't know. She's going to have to clarify that.
Well, anyway, hey, you are welcome to join us and be a part of our ministry. You can always donate at www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org and partner with us in the works that we're doing. And because we need partners like you to go with us and do things arm in arm, and together we spread the kingdom, that's for sure. Well, we want to jump right into our segment tonight. And we have slowly, like at a snail's pace, been walking through Psalm 91. Will that pace change tonight? I don't think so. I hear this really weird sound, by the way, John. Can you mute and let me see if it leaves? Oh, yeah. Now it's gone. Okay. So, there it's back.
Okay, so I'm not sure what that is because it's quiet in here other than my fan is running on my computer.
Can you turn that fan off?
I'll mute. Otherwise, I'm going to slip out of the picture so I can go grab my Bible. I left it over there in the other room. So hold on. I'll be right back.
All right. So as I said, we are continuing at a snail's pace with Psalm 91, but we have been really breaking apart the words. And I don't know if you have recognized some things, but Yahweh is saying some of the same things over and over, but in different ways, reminding us who he is and who we are and who the enemy is actually. And I don't think that journey is going to cease this evening. I think we're going to continue along that vein because, as I said, we are on Psalm 91:3 still. Yeah, last week we broke apart deliverer, but this week we're going to continue with that. And what does that say? Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence is one of the versions. If you look at it in Hebrew, it's Kayahu Ya Zilaka Miprak Yakosh Mi Dever Hawot. Okay, now the Hebrew is really important here because it's only when you look at the Hebrew that you can truly find the meaning of the words. That doesn't change the tonight. So we're going to look at snare. Now, snare, as you just heard me read, it was mipach. And that word has actually, it could come from two different words. So we're going to look at them both and see if they relate or would they both add meaning to this word. So the first one could be pakak. The second one could be pakad. What's interesting, we just went through pakad when we were talking about fear and darkness on the last message I gave at Life of Worship, which this is another shameless plug. You need to go to our Life of Worship Amarillo YouTube channel and listen to that message because I think it'll add to the study that we've been doing. In fact, it was part two of a two-part series. So go in there and listen because I think it'd be worth it. But pakak, it means to entrap, okay? So think about a trap, but it says either by a net or a snare. And I want you to really focus on the net as a snare tonight, just as we're reading this scripture, okay? Because it actually could be used to express this idea of something causing ruin, something causing destruction to something or to someone. But it is also used for crooked lightning. Now, isn't that odd? You picture the lightning in the skies when we draw it when we're kids, and even as adults, we do this crooked lightning strike. And so it's that same word used. And why would it be used that way? Because if we see lightning, danger could be on the way. In fact, you're going to count how far away was that? Because we expect the thunder to come right afterwards. So sometimes we brace ourselves. The thunder's coming. I don't know about you, but I have done that in the past. Don't continually do it, but I have done that. So here we have this in this word, mepach, in the root of it, pachak, is this idea of something coming to ruin or destruction, impending danger, just as that lightning strike. But the second word, pakad, we broke apart a lot more. And I think I'm going to maybe use some of those very same things that I used in the message 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. But pakad basically means to tremble. It means to fear. It means to be afraid of that impending danger. Okay, now with that being said, it's much bigger than you might think. Why do I say that? Because when you use this word pakad for this fear, it is almost startling. It's to be afraid, to stand in awe. And it's a fear that you fear for your own safety. You fear for your own life. That it's a fear that is so much become part of you that it's eating away at you. And it's sometimes used as dread. That word is actually translated as dread in several places in our word, but it's also a fear that destroys or attempts to destroy any enjoyment you might have in life, because what's in the back of your mind is fear. This idea that it's just not leaving, it's hanging on to you. So you can't eat, you can't sleep, but all you can think about is this impending fear or doom or dread that's on its way. The sages used to use the word dread for pakad, and it's close to the English, but the word is found in a form that means it's a constant fear, not something that's fleeting, not something that's going to last for a while, but it's this constant fear. Imagine the adrenaline flowing and your thoughts and how you react to things if you are living in a constant fear, almost a terror. Maybe I'll be laid off. What if my child's not born? What if my son or my daughter? What if my health? What if? We had actually, Misty has made it, AMA Ladybug has preached a sermon on what ifs before. It's very good. And that it's living in those what ifs because there's this fear that won't leave you. You worry, you fret, and it's taking every bit of life and the enjoyment of life out of you. And and when you look at Isaiah and you look at the word pakad, it's almost as if this fear is constantly before you. And we see that word used in Exodus, when there was terror and dread fell upon them by the greatness of your arm. They are motionless as a stone until your people pass over, O Yahweh, until the people pass over whom you have purchased. And that was talking about the plagues. Specifically, we talked about the plague of darkness. But so this fear is not just your average fear. No, it's not just your average fear. It's fear that's constant, that is within. And now, remember, we are not supposed to live in fear. Fear is not part of heaven. Fear is, there's a reverence, but we're not talking about that. We are talking about this constant dread, this constant terror. And that's this word pakad that mipak, this word snare comes from, possibly. And that's a big deal. A snare that causes constant dread and terror, and something that's taking the enjoyment out of life. Okay. That hopefully with those words, you can sort of get a picture of what the snare, the intenseness of this word snare could mean. All right. Now let's look a little bit more closely at pakach. Okay. P-A-C-H-A-C-H. And it's, and again, it means that entrapment or that snare or a net, but it represents danger and vulnerability. So I was reading this story about this guy. So it was an Englishman, and it was an American. And this Englishman was on his estate, and he offered to take the American bird hunting. Now, Americans, what are you going to do? You're going to pull out your gun. Now, in England, you don't pull out guns, but there's a different way that the Englishman had to hunt, or did hunt. So he was able to capture a bird with a net. Okay. And when he picked up that bird, he began to stroke the bird. And the American was like, dude, what are you doing? We're hunting, and you're petting a bird. But then, I mean, imagine this little bird, or big bird. I'm not sure how big it was, if they're hunting it for meat or sport, whichever it is. But then you look at one of God's creatures, and you might begin to endear yourself to the bird, even though they're bird hunting. And he looked at the American and said, you see, Americans are barbaric with your guns blowing the poor little creature apart. Look here, not a feather on his head is harmed. And so the American was charmed by the bird, but he began to stroke his head, and he was like, so what are we supposed to do now? Well, and the English guy, he went and his neck. So he killed him. Now, picture what happens when you're caught in a net or in a trap or in a situation that you feel like you can't get out of. First off, a net. Have you ever watched a creature, an animal entangled in a net? It's almost impossible without help to get yourself out of that net. That net, in fact, entraps you even further sometimes the more you struggle. So picture that. And when you think about this snare and this net, it's an illustration that we get ourselves trapped in a net of sin, and we begin to panic, and we become this fearful, this constant fear, and terrified of the doom that's ahead. But then what happens? We begin to climatize ourselves to the situation we're in. And all of a sudden, we learn to live inside that net. We learn to make things work inside that snare. And maybe we get comfortable with it. So comfortable, we let our guard down, just as that little bird let his guard down. Oh, well, these captors aren't so bad after all. I mean, they're stroking me and they're making me feel good. And yeah, I'm trapped inside the hands of a man, but I think I'm safe here. I think I'm okay. I'm not free. I'm sort of enslaved. I'm chained somewhat. I'm talking like this little bird, but I'm okay. And then there's death. And that's what happens to us when we become ensnared in these traps that the enemies lay before us, and we go right before it and we find ourselves there. And then we begin to get so comfortable that whatever got us there is sort of forgotten, or is no longer looked as sin, or sort of we sort of justify it because we've become used to this trap of sin, this snare of sin, this snare that the enemy's gotten us in. And it's not always from sin. That's true. But we become used to captivity, and we can't do that. And here are these words. It's amazing that there's hunting terms used in this psalm so much, because there's an enemy. What did we talk about at Life of Worship in those last two messages that I gave? The enemy prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. But our Yah is much bigger. And so here is this fear. Misty said, I'm going to just say what she popped up. She says, it reminds me of the story of the snake in the zoo, and how the bird eventually walks right into his mouth because the snake never moves. He just stares and essentially lulls the bird into complacency. Misty, that is a great example. That is a really good example, because I think it's that same picture, that snare and that entrapment that the enemy puts in front of us. Oh, well, it's there. We walk around it. We look at it. Nothing happens. We touch it. Nothing happened. Eventually, we walk inside of it, and it's over. So what a great picture. What a great picture. Thank you, Misty, very much. So here we have that snare, that mipach. Now, I want us to look at Fowler. And it is a word actually that's going to seem very similar in its meaning. So it's interesting that we would say the snare of the fowler, because it is yakosh or yakush, and it literally means entangled. Now, remember when I spoke of when we're in a net, sometimes that net is almost impossible to remove off of ourselves. It needs the help of something or someone else. And animals that get entrapped in the net virtually can't get out. It just gets worse and worse. So here we have this word that means entangled, a fowler. It can mean the person itself, or it actually can mean a snare as well. So because it's a passive participle, it can mean to ensnare. Okay. So we're getting a picture here. Again, it's these hunting terms. Why would we need to know about hunting terms when we're reading and proclaiming and singing this psalm? Yah always has a reason. He always has a reason. So fowler, trapper, bait layer, ensnared, to be ensnared. It is used in the Tanakh and translated in the KJV as fowler several times, snare sometimes. So there's different ways it's translated. But think about it also as meaning to lure, something enticing you to come hither. How often have we witnessed in our own lives or in other people's lives this enticement to enter into a situation that we know could destroy them or destroy us? But there's this enticement that we can't seem to break free of. That's sort of what this fowler means, this yokosh. And it's to lay this snare, set a trap, like to be a bird catcher or to be taken in a noose. Okay, guys, these are some big pictures here that we need to understand with this Psalm 91:3. And the first reference we see is Deuteronomy 7:25. So, Mr. Craig, if you could come on in and let us hear what that says. Deuteronomy 7:25. Hopefully you guys are getting out your word and you are turning there yourselves, because I think it's important that we all look. There's that sound again, folks. So sorry about that.
All right, I'm getting there. Deuteronomy 7:25.
Yes.
Okay. Deuteronomy 7:25 reads, "The graven images of their gods you are to burn with fire. You shall not covet the silver or the gold that is on them, nor take it for yourselves, lest you be snared by it. For it is an abomination to Yahweh your God," your Elohim.
Okay, so here we have these graven images would be a snare. Now let's turn to Isaiah 8:15. Isaiah 8:15. So you guys write it down.
All right, Isaiah 8:15. We're getting there.
Okay. Again, we need music. Page turning music.
Okay. Isaiah 8:15. "And many will stumble over them, then they will fall and be broken. They will even be snared and caught."
Okay, here's this word again. Now, one more scripture. Let's look at Isaiah 28:13.
28:13 reads, "So the word of Yahweh to them will be order on order, order on order, line on line, line on line, a little here, a little there, that they may go and stumble backward, be broken, snared, and taken captive."
Okay. So when we read these scriptures here, if you break it down just briefly, the understanding of it is that Israel's rejection of Yahweh, of his word, his debar, is in their inheritance, their rejection of God's word. This is how it affects them. Okay. But I want us to look at that root, the 2-letter root of the word, of this word, Yakosh. And it's a sheen and a kof. And it happens to be the word for stubble or chaff. Now, when I think of those words, I think of two things: that our works, that our man's works will be burned off as chaff. But I also think of the gathering of the straw that we just remembered on Passover, that Israel had to gather, was forced to gather when Pharaoh took their straw away. And that moment, okay, this is very important, folks. Listen right here. Because the moment Israel was obedient to gather the straw at the command of Pharaoh, it indicated that they had turned their backs on El Shaddai, on Yahweh. I'm going to say that again, and I want you to relate it today. When Israel decided to be obedient to gather the straw, it indicated that they had turned their backs on El Shaddai. When they became compliant to the Pharaoh, to the Egyptian leader, to Babylon, to the evil that they were subjected under, then they said, "Okay, Yahweh, we turn your back on you." Whew. That's the same thing that's happening now, folks. Put on, wear appropriate face wear. Do appropriate things to your body that the world says. Now think about this. The moment we comply, are we doing the same thing when we become obedient to those words and we follow suit with those commands of the world that are against Yah's word, by the way? We turn our backs on our deliverer, Yahweh himself. I don't know about you, but that's powerful. Katrina says, sounds familiar. And AMA Ladybug said, self-suffocation device. Yes, and yes, and yes. So I hope you think about that a minute as we continue on with this word study, because it really speaks to today's situation, because there have been traps and snares, and the Fowler is out there, and there's a constant fear and dread over the land. Are we going to be part of that? Are we going to break free of that? Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, it just, I think about the story that you told about the man who picked up the bird, and isn't that what it seems to be like? Everybody, we're comforting you with these solutions to this
stroking
pandemic.
us.
Yeah, but and this everything's good, and then as we have gotten comfortable in the hands of Big Brother, of government, of medical technology, of all of the whatever you want to call it, then when we're not expecting it, we get our neck snapped. I mean, honestly, that's
absolutely.
Really, I mean, that's it. I mean, it is just,
it's happening. It's happening right now. Yes.
And how many, and there's so many believers out there. There's so many pastors that are out there. Pastors are saying, well, you need to go and do this. And they're complicit in this. I'm going to keep myself careful. I'm going to say careful here so we don't get kicked off, but
save it for the next part of our show.
Save it for the next part, because we got more coming. So yeah, absolutely. It all falls in line with what you're saying.
It does. And that's what's amazing. So when we look at this Yakosh, this snare, this Fowler, I want you to understand, how does this happen? Because when you reject the promises, when you reject the word, you are choosing it. When you're doing that, you're choosing to continue to appease Pharaoh. Are we appeasing the Pharaoh of the land? I would say the majority of the land and lands of the world are. And that's sad. So it's this very rejection of the word, the debar, that is the snare of the Fowler that brings the noisome pestilence down. The rejection of him in the role of El Shaddai. You are the great and mighty God. You are El Shaddai, but I reject you in that area. And it sets in motion in our lives and in the world these plagues. That's what pestilence is, part of it. These plagues that come to our door individually and right now worldwide, because I believe that we have seen some of these things already being set forth. And maybe it's not an all at once thing, but we're seeing ourselves dug in deeper and deeper into into these plagues that are encompassing the land. Okay, so think about this, and the snare and the Fowler, how it all sort of goes into play. But I want us to really think about avoiding the Fowler snare. Let's read Psalm 140, verses 4 through 5. Psalm 40, verses 1 through 5.
All right. Psalm 40, verses 1 through 5.
140.
Oh, 140. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Going there. 1 through 5. Rescue me, O Yahweh, from evil men. Preserve me from violent men who devise evil things in their hearts. They continually stir up wars. They sharpen their tongues as a serpent, poison of a viper under their lips. Selah. Keep me, O Yahweh, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from violent men who have purposes to trip up my feet. The proud have hidden a trap for me in cords. They have spread a net by the wayside. They have set snares for me. Selah. Okay.
Over and over in the word, we do hear, and I don't know if you guys just listened, there was a reference to a net there, but we see these snares being set for Yah's people, and those people are constantly crying out, and we do need to cry out to him, because it's that cry out for deliverance that causes him to come into become our deliverer. And then when we look at Psalm 141:9, it says, keep me from the snares which they have laid for me, and the baits of the workers of iniquity. Okay, so there's purposeful things being done to specifically trap and entice and subject and bring under subjection the people of Yahweh. Why? Because those people are the ones that are decimating the kingdom of the enemy. So what does he want to do? He wants to eliminate you. The enemy wants to eliminate you. And so if he can't get you one way, he's going to try to come in from a different direction. And unfortunately, a lot of times as God people, we're looking over here and over here, but we forget to look over there. And that's why we need each other. and we fall prey to these traps. And some might say, what is that snare? I want you to realize, just as we talked previously about it being a bird, always understand that the snare is a trap. Some instead of the net might be considered that noose-like cord that's under the feet that would be pulled tight, and there would be no escape. But understand that Hasatan works the same way. He works the same way. So if you are messing with his kingdom, the chances are that you might be battling somewhere else is good, because if you're decimating his kingdom, he's going to try to come in from a different direction. And so if you're under attack, rest assured that you're probably on the right path. And I like what Misty said. She said he takes his time doing what it takes, basically. And yes, he does. So if you are like this bird, and Satan is like Hasatan's like the Fowler, he can't rise to your level when you're walking in Yeshua, when you're walking in the Torah, when you're walking in the fullness of the Spirit. He has to bring you down to ground level so that you will fall into his trap. Picture that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're looking at a Fowler, one of the definitions in Fowler is a trapper or a bait layer. One who lays down bait. So in the middle of that trap, that snare is something it looks like
enticing.
It's enticing. Oh, it looks like something that I really need. It looks like something that's going to be good for me. It looks like something that's going to benefit me and my family. We'll be safe. We'll be able to get benefits from this. And yet in itself is the very snare.
Well, because when we've set our eyes on that bait, when all of a sudden our eyes are not focused upward and our gaze upon him, they're focused on things here. And then our eyes are set down and we see the bait that you just spoke of. And our pride convinces us, hey, that's a good thing. And we're convinced that we understand completely, oh, that's not a trap, I've got that. Or if we say, yeah, it's a trap, but I know how to get around it. So our pride convinces us that we understand what we're seeing, and we have these promises of quick advancement or opportunities, or the flattering tongues of people come our way, or it looks good, it looks quick, it looks easy, it's tempting, and Yah has placed us in a place where we're supposed to look to him as that source, but instead, all of a sudden, we're being brought down to the level of the enemy, and our gaze and our trust is no longer on Yahweh, and we eat and take hold of that bait, and now we're trapped. We're trapped. And that's what I see over and over and over and over again. And I can't say that we haven't done it ourselves, because I believe, if we're honest, we've probably all been in a place where that allurement, enticement has caused us to make wrong decisions. Did you have something? You unmuted.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking there are so many things that when you look at it, how many times that are things that are going on in the world today. And this is why we have the Craig report, so we can bring these things up, where we look at it as, if we are not in Messiah, if we don't know who we are, if we don't see ourselves as overcomers, we will see ourselves even as bait. And
we're nothing but grasshoppers.
Nothing but grasshoppers. We are set up. It's like there's no way out. So what are we going to do? Just lay down? I mean, like that bird, he just like, okay, I'm chilling now. This is must be a safe place. And we can't do that. We cannot give up. We cannot be unaware of the devil's schemes. And, in the past, we've always looked at these schemes as something that ensnares us, that entraps us in regards to sin or some type of iniquity of something that's handed down, and it's a bloodline generational curse or something like that. And yes, those things are just as real. But right now, We're talking about things that are happening in this world that are life and death decisions, and we must decide what side we're going to line up with, because one side is a trap and it will mean our ultimate demise. And there's no way backing out. And I say ultimate demise, even though someone might have the Jesus piece, it will be their eternal damnation, because they will find themselves ensnared, and once they're in the middle of that, they are too far in it to get out, because they lacked the discernment, and they
weren't walking in spirit and truth.
They loved not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came under that great delusion, according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And we must be people that love the truth, so that we can discern even what the bait is.
Yes. Well, here's another aspect before we go on to perilous pestilence or noisome pestilence, is that when you think about all of this referring to the bird, the trapper, and we understand that in ancient times birds were used for food, some sources talk about this being a poetic picture of Hasatan and his demons who fly through the air searching for human prey, that they're metaphors of destruction and destructive and deceiving spirits. And we can look at that in Genesis 15:11. If you want to turn there, Genesis 15:11. But as he's turning there, it's really interesting now to talk about what we've just talked about, and then turn it over, or not turn it over, because it's still talking about the same thing. But now let's talk about the demonic. And you may say, well, the demonic isn't real. Oh, I can tell you, yes, it is. To say that's not real would mean to say the angelic hosts aren't real. They're real. But again, Yeshua's overcome, but we have to understand. Genesis 15:11.
All right. And the birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, and Avram drove them away.
Okay. Now let's go to Matthew 13:4. Matthew 13:4. All right.
13:4, I'm almost there. Matthew 13, verse 4. And he sowed some seed, and he sowed. Some fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up.
19. Now go to verse 19.
When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is the one on whom seed was sown beside the road.
Okay. So there we have some foundation for that picture. Physical traps, spiritual traps. The enemy goes about enticing, trapping, and baiting us. But we must trust in Yah's word and trust in him, and not fall prey to his devices, or not be lulled into compliance. Now, let's look at noisome or perilous pestilence. And pestilence is the Hebrew word D-E-B-E-R. Now, that should sound really familiar, because debar is what? It's word. So we know they're going to be related because they have the same letters. So here we have debar, and it means an infectious disease or plague. Isn't that interesting that that word and plague are so close together? And it can refer to the pestilence sent by Yahweh as a punishment for sin, or presumably for not obeying his word. And when men fail to, it goes back to what we said earlier, when we fail to obey the word, when we fail to listen and do Shema, the word of Yah becomes the punishment in itself to us. And that's that contronym that we see in every word in the Hebrew language, that opposite, even in our very names, that opposite. There's good and there's bad. So the word can bring forth life, or it will bring forth death, because we walk in blessing or we walk in curse. And go to Deuteronomy 28, read the blessings and the curses. First 14 verses are about blessing, but the rest of the chapter, which is most of the chapter, are about the curses, the diseases, the plagues, our very attitudes when we've fallen under the curse, and how our mindset has changed. Exodus 15:26 plainly tells us that when we obey, what happens? None of the diseases of the Egyptians shall befall us. Okay? That's what happens when we obey. But perilous is also the Hebrew word havah, Havvah. Okay? I'm going to get there for you in just a second. And when you look at this word, it can mean to desire in a bad sense. It can also mean to a chasm of destruction or engulfing or ruin or calamity. But when you look at it meaning desire, it's a desire that leads us to destruction. Okay, that should go ding, ding for us, because that goes back to those words of enticement that we were talking about earlier. There's a desire within us that in our actions to grasp hold of that desire, we fall into destruction. It leads us straight down that path. Thus, a medavah, that perilous pestilence, that noisome pestilence, could mean a destructive plague. And it could also mean that if you have evil in your heart and you devour or speak it out, it could cause the destruction, that destructive desire in someone, or a desire for revenge, or let's say even a destruction of your own life, because we live and die in the power of our words. I mean, think about it. The word is powerful. Even the word that you speak over your own life can lead straight to destruction. That should wake us up every time we are reminded of those things, because it is true. So when the psalmist is he's basically making allusion to Numbers 11, when the people were crying out and complaining about the manna because they wanted meat. So what did Yah do? He sent the meat. He sent the quail, and so much quail that they couldn't even handle it, and they had to start eating. Anyway, they ate to their fill and above that, and it leads to more death and destruction. And ultimately, that's what happens to us. Their own desires led them to destruction. Our own desires, if we are not balanced, if we're not in the word, leads us to destruction. And it's this hunter's motif that continues. If we just continue down this line, this enticement, this bait, and it almost seems like the Fowler snare and the perilous pestilence are they're parallel each other. They have similar, though yet different meaning, but they're similar in meaning. And so what I think we've got to really watch for, these two, is this pairing, is that Yahweh's trying to get our attention, that life out there, we can't just continue unaware of life around us. I know in this day and this hour that we are told to physically know your surroundings, know who's around you, know what you see, pay attention to entrances, exits, pay attention to things around you. Don't just walk through life focused on where you're going and not notice what's around you. And I think that's what we see here, is that beware of the enemy's be aware of the enemy's tactics, thus that you not be sucked in yourself and that you become that prey. Yes, Yahweh is our deliverer. He is our strong tower. In fact, let's go back to Psalm 91 and let's read the first 3 verses one more time as we end out this teaching, because it's just important. It's important for us to understand the gravity of the warning that he's given us, but as well as the assurance of his protection. Go ahead.
Well, as we get ready to read that, I was just looking at Debar being the root of Debar, and it means to arrange. And so um, when you relate that to Debar, which means pestilence or plague, and that it's like there has to be things that precede a plague. There has to be things that precede a pestilence that comes in. In other words, you have to have all of the right circumstances building up to create the perfect environment for it to occur. So everything is perfectly arranged, and it just makes me wonder, and it makes me think about how our own lives are based on what we are desiring or coveting. Like, for example, if we desire to live our life and not die to ourselves, we're told to in order to live for Messiah, we are to die for ourselves. And if we choose to gain our life, then we'll lose it. And therefore, what I'm seeing here is that coveting, that chava, that coveting, that desire, that to go after the things that feed our very flesh, the things that we want for our lives, and we do it very well as believers. Don't get me wrong, because that's who we're talking to. That if we are feeding ourselves, that feed that sin nature, that flesh nature, as opposed to building up the spirit within us, then what will be arranged for us is a pestilence, a disease, uh, something that will bring about a destruction before us. We are actually setting our own future, and we have to be aware that what we do now is what is preparing our future for us. It's arranging our destruction, or it's arranging our salvation. It just depends on the focus of what we want our lives to be. If we live our lives as well, you hear me say the term, we got the Jesus piece, so we're safe. Well, how about this? We have the Torah piece, so we're safe. But if we've not died to ourselves to live for Yahweh, then we are finding ourselves in that same predicament. It won't save us. We're holding to a form of godliness and desire and denying the power thereof. And that's what brings about the destruction. It's been set for us this day. Choose you this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Right.
So Psalm 91, 1-3.
Yes.
He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to Yahweh, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust, for it is he who delivers you from the snare of the trapper and from the deadly pestilence.
It is. Now, to end this, I want to end it on a note that sort of brings us into the position we should be in, okay? Because we know that the enemy is compared to the Fowler, the lion, the serpent. They're all pictures of the enemy. But I want us to look at some scripture really quickly and put some things together, because he is the one that delivers us from those things. He is that. What you just read, he delivers us from the Fowler snare, from the perilous pestilence. But let's look at John 10:10. It says, the thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. 1 Peter 5:8, as we just spoke, be sober, be vigilant. What did I just say? You be sober, you be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And then Luke 10:19. Luke 10:19. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Okay, wait, I thought that Yah is my deliverer. Yes. These two are paired, though, because I think it says sometimes Yah is sovereignly delivering you from the enemy supernaturally, but sometimes we are to take up the authority that he has given us. Remember who we are and the power of the name of Yeshua, because he has already won the victory and we are his body. We are his bride. We are together. His enemies are our enemies are his enemies because of the covenant, and we trample the enemy underfoot ourselves. We do it. So yes, there's the supernatural deliverance of Yah, but there's also us remembering who we are, and we take our ground and we stand in the name of Yeshua, and we are not moved, but we are the ones that trample the enemy. So if the enemy's bothering you, if something's been stolen from you, if something that you have is being destroyed, don't lay down, but stand up. And with the authority that Messiah has given you, you trample that serpent underfoot. But know that he is your deliverer. And that is going to do it for our teaching this evening before we go to the Craig Report. And anyway, again, you can go to www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org and join us and partner with us. Get more information about Sukkot or Shavuot, Pentecost, or the Feast of Tabernacles, and join us. But before we end, I'm going to let you tell everybody, John, what to do and where to go.
Okay, so what I have here on the screen that everybody can see is the Craig Report. You can see that over on Messianic Lamb Network there on YouTube, and you can see the Craig Report, and there you got me sitting there in that funny picture. But this show is not on YouTube, and so what do? We'll scroll down here, and if you look at the comments just underneath, it says watch without the chat at messianiclambradio.com, or if you want to be part of the chat, then go to and click the link www.twitch.tv/Lamb Network, and you can be part of the chat in that. That's where we're going to go next as we close out here today. So I want to say thank you so much for being part of the program. I got to figure out how to pull the, oh, there we go. Stop sharing. There we go. Oh, you're muted.
The program's not over, so go over and watch the Craig Report. We want to thank you for joining us this evening. And I'm not going to say shalom yet because it's not over. Here we go.
That's right. That's right.